Hello, I'm here.
Hello. All right, Alita, we have you coming in at slide 21, so I'll cue in you when it's time, and we'll unmute you. All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome. Happy January, and our first webinar for the new year. So delighted to have you here today. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about hosting and exploring some of the new trends in agritourism. So feel free to use the comment section. And of course, at the end, we'll sort of host any questions that you may have. This is being recorded just so we're able to share this with you at the end of this, and also with our other Open Farm Days registrants. So we do have a few new people here today, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Open Farm Days, just top line. But essentially now it is a province-wide initiative which connects urban and rural, and it's an open house for agritourism and to really take a look at developing their farms and seeing what opportunities there are, either for education or for economy as well. So I think there's a lot of different opportunities, and different farms take it in different directions. And we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the trends and some of those directions that you may want to take. Our team is pretty consistent. We have Suzanne Kelly, who is basically our program manager for Open Farm Days. So she is all things important of our direction and where we're going with it. We have Chris that works for Suzanne, and she comes in seasonally and helps us with recruitment and web stuff and all sorts of running around as we get closer. Myself and I do a lot in terms of the regulatory planning and training, and then Nicola, who is media, marketing, and all those marvelous things. Sorry, I'm trying to read. Yeah. So if you've got any questions about any of the specific things, please feel free to ask us any questions and contact us directly for our specific areas. You can see this adorable little picture of an alpaca. We are just in the process, about 2 weeks out of announcing our thematics for this year. The United Nations has an International Year of the Camelids. And camelids are alpacas, llamas, and Bactrian camels. And so we're going to do a story on those charming little creatures. We're also going to talk a little bit about the fiber story and different things. This doesn't change anything about Open Farm Days in general. It allows us to take a look at some global trends and to actually talk about some of the things that are happening globally. And it gives us a little bit more reach, which is, I think a great opportunity. The artwork that you can see to the right there is done by an Edmonton artist named Kaylee Rose. And we'll be doing some fun tattoos for the farms. We will have coloring sheets for kids. All sorts of different little things that will go with it this year. So we'll look forward to sharing those information. Our feedback from last year with our artists that we had, Liz Buller-Page, and our coloring sheets of the bison were met with a lot of really positive responses, and people are asking for more of that. So we're having a little bit of fun with that. So as we kick this off and talk about trends, of course, the alpaca is one when we look at global trends, but I think what's really interesting is to take a look at the market and the market size and why we're doing this. If you take a look at some of the research done in agritourism, you're going to see a lot of different numbers that come across. So there's a wide range of different numbers, and the reason for that is different people include different things in agritourism. So I think our numbers, we're going to see variation. So if you search up what the global agritourism numbers are, you're going to see a bit of a variation. And you're also going to see different trends that come across for growth. But I'm using an average one here that is pretty consistent with Grandview Research. And the current market size of agritourism is about $56 billion US. And we're looking at about 11% growth compounding annually. So right now there's massive trends in this. So, this is really something that we really want to be part of and growing. And if we want to take a look at our Alberta tourists to get a little bit closer, we can see that we have a lot of people coming here to Alberta for tourism. So we've got 31 million visitors that are here. And when we talk about a visitor, we're talking people that are traveling 30 to 40 kilometers as a minimum. They might be traveling that much more, but a lot of our visitors are local Albertans. So when people are thinking people aren't going to be coming from further destinations to visit our farms, in the early days, that is potential, that it is driving mostly local traffic. But when we take a look at the potential size of those local visitors, it's massive. So 31.9 million visitors, 27 million of those are Albertans. And those are the people that we really want to have coming to visit us during open farm days. And our 3.5 million of other Canadians that are visiting us are predominantly from our two neighboring provinces, and that is considered to be drive traffic. So we have a lot of people coming from Saskatchewan and British Columbia, which is one of our growing target areas coming up. So we can take a look at that, and there's a lot of people coming out. So when we look at our humble numbers for open farm days, we're seeing some lovely growth, but there really is a massive upside of what that potential looks like. And then the visitor spend as we drop down is tremendous, and we would love to see more of those dollars, of course, in your pockets as well. So the more that we can do to encourage that sort of growth is really important. All right, give me 2 seconds here. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about some of the growing trends here in agritourism, and nothing can happen without product. And what we're seeing is a real shift in the entrepreneurial nature of farmers. So with that shift in kind of embracing alternate incomes and different ways to look at making money, we've seen a lot more product come online. So we've seen this, of course, locally here in Alberta, but it's something that's happening globally. So this is a shift that's happening. When we take a look at those massive growth rates, those growth rates have actually spiked a little bit. And one of the major contributing factors to that spike is actually COVID. So I guess it's good to be able to say something good came out of all of this. But what happened was people started to take a little bit of a look closer. 93% of travel stopped during COVID. And people, when travel slowly started to resume, they started to take a look around to see where they could go with restrictions of limitation of how far you could go. People started looking closer to home, and it created a groundswell, which is really interesting. We'll look at a few stats in a minute. But what's really interesting about the trends is the groups, because it's not just one group. So we're seeing millennials, young families, we're seeing corporations. There's a whole lot of people that are looking to get into agritourism, that want to experience it, that want to do it. So it's a wide-ranging market with a massive budget behind it at all ends. So there's low end, mid-range, and high end. So there's a lot of people with money that they want to spend, and they are taking a look at rural destinations for spending their dollars. And leading some of these trends are collaboration. We're seeing massive growth there, packaging, accommodations, and product developments. For all of these things to come together, we kind of need all of those pieces to happen. And this is a little bit about what we're talking about today. So with collaboration and exploring partnerships, it's interesting. There's a number of different studies that have been done, and one is saying that that businesses that started to explore collaboration saw a 25% increase in their revenues because of their collaboration. And of course, it doesn't happen overnight, but that value of connecting with your local communities and the businesses is massive. And depending on where you are and who you are, the way that you can do it is obviously unique. A couple of the areas that they were highlighting was joint events, partnering with local restaurants for farm-to-table experiences, participating in community initiatives. And when we can work together, some really magical things start to happen. So the question is, as a business yourselves, are you engaging? Who are you working with that might be close to you, that you can do some interesting things? There's one partnership that I really like with Innisfail Growers, and it's a collective of farms just outside of Calgary in Innisfail, where they started working together, independently owned farms, and they understood that people were coming to each of their farms to visit. And they happily started recommending, well, hey, if you're looking at farms, you should drive down the street and here's where a neighboring farm is. And they solidified that partnership, and they created little pamphlets, and it was, you know, it was simple, but they recognized that people were already out there, and here was another farm not far away. And that partnership has grown and grown, and they work together in the markets. They share retail opportunities, and they do different initiatives that actually help to collectively grow all of their projects together. And I think it's really important to take a look at those sorts of things and think, what are the things that you can do? I'd like to share an interesting experience that I had just a couple of months ago when I was in Ireland, and I was exploring agritourism out there. And there's a region, the Burren region, and it's not overly large, and it's not very well populated, and it's definitely it's that rural area. And 10 years ago, they started to work together as a collective. And it was a bunch of different businesses, and it was everything from accommodations and restaurants, processors, they had smoke houses, they had all sorts of different things. And they formed a local group, and they worked. And it was interesting in speaking with them. They're like, there was a lot of kind of setbacks. There's a lot of times when it didn't look like things were going to move forward. And they sort of persevered. And at that 10-year mark, they were able to get an executive director to come on board and to help them work together. But the collateral that you can see there, if you take a little look at the right-hand side of the screen, they created these promo cards for each of the independent businesses. And this one, we're at the Doolin Caves. So we're at a cave, and they have this stand, and it has all of the different businesses. And what was fascinating about it is they're just always asking you, where are you going next? Where are you coming from? And, you know, do you need a place to stay? So they're really actively promoting each other. And it was quite lovely to see that level of engagement and support of all the local businesses. But they also did it in their own way. In the bottom left corner, that is actually a little binder. Picture doesn't do it justice, but they had the binder in this little cafe, and the cafe, you could sit there and you could flip through the different pages of all the different businesses that are around. So we're in a sort of a tourism spot. So they're talking about what are the experiences you can have. So this ability for them to work collectively together with very diverse businesses spread out through a rural area was wonderful. And each of them promoted it slightly differently, whether it was with the binder, whether it was with the standees. But all of them, everyone that's on this Burren region, was co-promoting each other. So it was really quite nice to see them interested in the growth and the success of everything that was going on. So it's really interesting when we step back from it to think about what are those neighboring, the farms, the attractions, the restaurants, and think, how, you know, what is that ability for you to be able to co-promote each of the areas? When you think about your farms, you know, can you invite them out to participate? Can you encourage a neighboring farm to sign up? Because that actually creates a bigger pull to the region. Can you collaborate together to create something that's larger? Really, what can you do to increase tourism for both you and everyone else? All right, I'm going to pause for 2 seconds. I can see there's a few things in the chat. Okay, great. Thank you. I love the cards. We started a series of ag themes. Yeah, it's really interesting is when you take a look at some of these collateral pieces that are out there, it really starts to inspire people at that point of purchase. So they're already there. So you're not, you know, you're not taking them away from your business, but you're giving them a suggestion of where else to go. And that level of partnership is really, really quite wonderful to see. I'm going to share a couple of US stats, mostly because our market does mirror what they are doing. And I thought this one was actually quite interesting. You can see that outdoor recreation in terms of agritourism has the largest piece of single market share. So they're sitting there at 35%. So that is that dark blue bar kind of in the middle. Seeing some really nice growth on that area. And if you take a look at, if we're looking at that 11.4% compound growth year over year over year, the size of that interest in outdoor recreation is really, really quite interesting. We're going to get into that in the next slide a little bit more, but something to think about, those outdoor activities and stuff that you have on your farm and that people are really looking for. Educational tourism is another one. It is one of the fastest growing segments that's in there. And that is the one that is that kind of pinky bar. When we think about educational tourism, this is not just student groups. We're looking at education tourism at both ends. So we're talking about a lot of adults who are looking to be lifelong learners. So they are looking to learn something new, to understand how things are grown, understand, and it could be anything from classes, it could be anything from cooking to how to, or just pure experiential stuff. So what people are looking to do is to be educated and to learn. So thinking about how we use open farm days to kind of fuel that is important. Obviously, one of the important components of open farm days is that there be a free educational experience. So as you start to think about the initiatives and stuff that you're educating people on, I think that's an important one. The entertainment or agritainment, as they're starting to talk about it, is to a lesser degree what people are looking for, but obviously it has its niche. On-farm market sales is big, and that is another one of those areas that has a large base, continues to grow. And another segment that we're going to talk about in a minute is accommodations and farm stays and the growth in that category. And what's really interesting when we get to that is that category is growing on multiple groups and age groups, and both at a low end, mid-range, and high end. So it's quite a fascinating category to talk about. And my apologies for this slide because there's a lot in it. But I wanted to talk a little bit about agritourism and the different types that we're starting to see, and that it isn't necessary for you to live in all spaces of it. And I sort of categorize them as active and passive. So we have the really active stuff where people want to get in and they want to get their hands dirty. They want to have these great experiences. And a lot of times we're talking about like the ing that goes with stuff. So they're milking cows, collecting eggs, driving tractors. People really want to understand and get a piece of that farm experience. They really want to do some stuff. So it's kind of fun, but it's really active. They want to the things that might seem mundane and are everyday for you, like feeding animals. People really get a kick out of understanding how that works. So it's not really just about feeding the chickens, but it's about understanding, well, how often do you feed them? What do you feed them? Where does it come from? Where do you get your products? Those are things that people are really, really interested in. And it is that active sort of thing, and it's at all ages. So we've got little kids that want to learn about it, but we've got seniors that equally want to learn about it. What's interesting is we start to go through that list, you're going to see a lot of high-end activities as well. So we will see things like trail rides, and so people are willing to spend a lot of money or a little money. But traditionally, the bulk of our people are looking for cost-effective, family-friendly kind of experiences. But there's a lot of room as well for niche, high-end experiences as well. As we start to move to the right, we move from young families and children and young adults to mid-age, and then to an older demographic. And we start to see a bit more passive activities coming in. So we think about it, if you think about the difference between perhaps an 8-year-old's birthday party and an 80-year-old's birthday party. When you're young, you want lots of activities, lots of different things going, and it's busy, busy, busy time. As we move over to the passive, there's a lot of people that are coming out to rural areas and they're looking for quiet, and they want to go birding, and they're not looking for noisy groups. They don't need their days to be packed. They don't need a ton of activities. They are happy to go for a walk, a hike, take their binoculars, go canoeing, just enjoy the landscapes, enjoy different things. So a lot of times when we're talking to farms, there's a worry that everything has to be super busy and hectic, whereas it doesn't need to be. Creating something that fits for your family, for your lifestyle, and for your property. There is a market for it. And some of the markets are larger and some are smaller. And some are willing to spend more money and some spend less money. But you're going to have a volume of people when we start to talk about the hobby farms and things like that, to fewer people, but more spend as we start to talk about the higher end experiences that exist out there. All right, I'm going to pause for a second, take a look at the chat and see if there's anything I need to answer. Okay, great. You guys are chatting, is all good. All right. So when you think about your farm and your businesses and developing trends, I think what's really important is authenticity. And that was one of the #1 words of the year for 2023 is authentic. And something that's true to your brand, true to your farm, something that is not viewed as a tourism trap. Some people are coming out to rural destinations to have what they call real experiences. So when you start to develop and explore the options, really think about what is right for you, what is right for your family, what are those areas that you genuinely want to explore, because to be successful in agritourism, having something that you love doing with a targeted group of people that you want to actually work closely with, you will have the most success for it. Really think about it with your own farm business. Is there something unique on your farm right now that you think you can grow, that you can take a look at and expand for yourself, perhaps for a young family member or a senior family member, as you take a look at that farm economy. There's a lot of room to grow, and I think it's really interesting and a lot of fun. As we move forward and take a look at some of the driving trends for agritourism, I think this is something that won't come as a shock to anyone. But both local and international visitors are looking to book direct. People are spending more time, they're more savvy with booking tools and things like that. They are spending a lot of time on the sites. They want to get all the information that they need to from there. They aren't going to ask a lot of questions. They may or may not contact you directly. They want to be able to find what they're looking for right on your website. So it's really important that you spend the time and the energy to really expand that. And if you've got questions about what you should be doing with that, Nicola will be doing some sessions on web and social media coming up. And of course, she is always available for private consultations to help you with what you're doing as well as we build towards Open Farm Days. They're looking to see authentic reviews. So that is something that when people are visiting you, you should be asking them for feedback. You should have a platform for people to be able to submit stuff. That sort of solidifies that deal for a lot of people. It's like, oh, all these people liked it. Okay, good. I feel good about making this choice now. They also want to be able to customize their experience, and they are looking for value for their spend. The bulk majority of people, they want to come out, they're prepared to spend money, but they want to feel like that was money well spent. So that's something to keep in mind. If you don't know how some of these things measure up for your own business, sometimes it is hard for us to see our own businesses because we're so used to our websites and our social. I'd suggest asking a trusted friend to take a look at some of your stuff so that they can give you some genuine feedback. And I would say there's certainly a lot of value for it. When we're talking about packages, I think what's really interesting, and one of the things that is driving the huge amount of money behind agritourism, are global packages. And I think you might find this fascinating. And I put down 5 different companies here. What these are global tour operators. We've got one from New Zealand, one from Australia. We've got a US one and a UK one in there. And if you want to take a look at some of the packages, these are packages that are put together that take international travelers to two countries. So there'll be like a 10-day package to Western Canada. There'll be obviously packages all over the world. But when you take a look at that, you can see what the global tourist is looking for. And it's really sometimes hard for us to get our head wrapped around. If we're going to Europe, we've got a mindset of, oh, here's what I want to go and see. But when people are coming here to Canada and they want to see farms and they want to see mountains and they want to see the Calgary Stampede, and those are the things that become on their list. You might be interested to take a look and see, when people are coming to Canada, what it is that they're taking a look at. And this can help inspire you about working locally with other farms and thinking, what could we put together regionally that could be a really interesting experience to come to our region. And I think there's so many fascinating things that we have here in Alberta that I think would be interesting for international travelers, but also for local travelers as well, that really haven't had that opportunity to experience rural Alberta. But we know what we have in our backyard more than they do. So it's important for us to figure out, how can we pull these things together and how can we package them? So when you think back around that collaboration, I'd like you to take a moment to just think about the neighboring farms and things that you have, and what might make an interesting trip for somebody that was coming from further away. And when we do that, we can start to really perhaps come up with a few new ideas of what might be interesting to the local tourists as well. When we take a look at developing those tours, I always suggest that we take a look at some of our global leaders first. So there's a lot of places out there that are doing some really interesting things on a large level. So take some inspiration from what we're seeing out there and think about how to put them together. So for Open Farm Days, obviously with our free educational experience people are having, we want people to come out and have this amazing, memorable experience. When we look at visitor feedback, both for Open Farm Days, but when you take a look at visitor feedback from tour companies, tour operators, there are pretty much consistently 5 things that you're going to find on the evaluation list from them. The number one reported thing back from everybody, almost always, is the guide. That person that greets them, that person that takes them through that tour that they've had. And that is the person that they connect most with for most of the experiences. And having somebody that's informative, passionate, knowledgeable, entertaining, funny, whatever it is, that is the most important person in your entire world for creating that experience for our guests. So spend some time thinking about who is showing them around, because that's your make or break one. Communications ranks very high as well. So if people feel like, I know what's going on, I know when I'm supposed to arrive, I know where I'm supposed to go, that communication is really, really important. What's really interesting when we take a look at reviews from tourism spots, when people felt walking into a scenario like they didn't know, well, they didn't get back to me, nobody responded, I didn't know where I was supposed to go, they're already entering into that whole experience with a negative. So that communication piece, and that comes down to even knowing where they can park, knowing where they're supposed to stand, knowing how they're supposed to enter your farm. Those pieces are so important because when people feel uncomfortable or like they might be in the wrong place, it kind of sets them off on the wrong foot. So I think that is really important. The next one is food. Tastes. People expand their stay by eating, by exploring their senses. So what do things taste like? What do they smell like? That completes the experience and the amount of time that they're going to spend there, because if they get hungry and there's no food, then they're going to leave. Next one is treatment. I think we've all been to places where we've been in there and we felt like, oh my gosh, I don't know if they really want me here. So if I feel like I'm interrupting their work, I'm not valued, or it's not important to them that I'm here, then people feel uncomfortable, they shorten their stay and they shorten their spend. And then lastly is safety and comfort. Safety is more of an international thing, of course, but do they feel like they're going to get hurt on this experience? Do they feel like everything is working for them? It's really important. So if you think about those 5 things as you are thinking about your tours, I think you'll be off to a really great start. So we think about that, that information piece. I grabbed a bunch of these signs just in my most recent one, but it's really nice knowing where you're supposed to be going, what's going on, that education piece. So something to be thinking about as you explore agritourism is understanding that knowledge. That education piece is really very important for it. This one, as we start to talk a little bit about food, I liked this. This was a distillery in Ireland that we visited, and it's a beautiful little space. And they set up a very small cafe, and they had very small bites. And they were inspired by one of the food trends in Spain called pinchos, which are just mini little appetizers. But what they created was a tray of pinchos, which is all local foods. So everything on that plate was celebrating local cheeses, local meats, local vegetables. And they had this, I mean, they had beautiful, beautiful presentation, but it was really very simple. But it was authentic, and that supporting everybody there, I think, was just rather remarkable. So when we think about, what we're going to be doing with food on your farms, and what offerings you're going to give them to extend their stay, what's really important is not that it necessarily be fancy or high end like this, but it is important that it be authentic and local. So one of the farms that or some of the farms actually that have had some of the top rated foods and commented on foods are things like yak chili and sloppy joes, and things that were made from local meats. They were comfort food, and they felt like they were locally prepared, family recipes. People love that kind of thing. They would much rather have that than something commercially prepared. So I think that's really important. All right, moving on to accommodations. This is kind of an interesting one. And when we start to talk about rural Alberta, if we want people to be able to stay and spend time in our areas, then they need somewhere to stay. And make a weekend of this, make a week of it. So thinking about your region, how many unique, interesting accommodations are available? And we're starting to see a nice increase in this. We're starting to see some really interesting glamping coming up, which is very exciting. Obviously that comes with time. But then there's also the opportunity to put together packages with local hotels and local businesses. So really that opportunity to move things forward is really interesting. And we're going to talk about a couple of interesting things and trends that are starting to happen. But farm stays are huge right now. So farm stays popular among the 25 to 34-year-olds, millennials, couples, groups, young families, 58% increase in those looking for large group outings as well. And large group outings were considered to be 12 or higher, just so you know. Forbes magazine did an article, and they said Airbnb reported over 1,000% increase in guest searches for farm stays, and other searches also included rural life and farm life. So we're seeing a lot of people saying, hey, where can I go and stay? I want to go to the country. I want to spend some time there. Yes, this started with COVID. What's really interesting is the post-COVID trends have continued. So people really want to get out there. We talked a little bit about the development piece, and what we're seeing too globally is a lot of governments are putting money in and behind rural development. And they're doing this for a number of reasons around food sustainability, around supporting rural lifestyle. But as we start to see more and more of this, what's happening is people are going to travel internationally, and they're going to go and visit farms. And even when they come back home, then they're going to think about, oh, well, I wonder about my farms here. So what's interesting is we start to see this as a global trend. It happens with international tourists, but that sort of domino effect, it happens more and more then with local tourists as well. Because if you experience it somewhere, then you want to come home and learn more about your own backyard as well. So as we start to talk about trends and accommodations, we're going to get into something, but I'd like to introduce Alita Prinz with Gull Lake Honey. And she has some stuff that she has graciously been willing to share with us around her experiences and what she has done with accommodations for Gull Lake. Alita.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I didn't prepare a whole bunch, but I'm more than happy to just talk about our experience. Our farm, if you don't know who we are, it's a long-standing family farm. My husband's family has been, farming here for over 40 years, but the honey side of the business is fairly new. We've just and this is our 7th season as beekeepers, and only the 4th season now going in with our own, like having the honey house and everything here. And so when we built the facility, it was right at COVID. And so we didn't really know what it was going to look like, but we just kind of jumped in and said, let's try a little bit of everything. So we really did jump on the education bandwagon. We wanted to teach, but we were learning about bees ourselves. We're like, hey, let's teach everybody else as whatever we learn. Let's just share that. The collaboration pieces that Tanis has touched on has been huge for us. Just there's other businesses in the area that have been doing things like this. We have Cray Family Farm, not far from us, was huge corn maze, and they've been doing it excellent for years. So pulling from some of their knowledge and some of the other farm businesses and tourism businesses, we really tried to do a little bit of everything. And then farm stays is something that we really want to continue to grow in. We had a lot of, as visitors started coming, they're like, oh man, I wish like I could just stay the night, or what a beautiful piece of, slice of heaven you have here. I'd love to experience that more. Like, you're so lucky. And so we, the thoughts of building a actual campground on our property, or renting out some of our on-farm accommodations that we have for our workers and stuff. We're throwing a lot of ideas in the air, but Harvest Hosts is something that just a guest, a patron, a visitor that came to us said, you guys would be an excellent Harvest Host location. And so I had no idea what that was. And a little bit of research brought a lot of information. So it was a perfect fit for an immediate transition into on-farm stays, because we really, as a host farm, don't need to provide or do anything as far as setup goes. What we have is space. So it's RVers that come with a fully, all their amenities are in their RVs, and that's one of the requirements of Harvest Host. So we don't have to provide hookups, power, sewage, nothing, which was great because that didn't require us to set up anything. And they would just come. We'd have to give them a nice place to park. Generally, so we started 2 years ago with that. 2022 was our first full year, and then last year as well. The guests are super excited to be on the farm, and I think they're some of our favorite visits of people, and they've come from all over the place. We've had local people from Red Deer and maybe even Edmonton, but we've had people from all over the United States, because Harvest Host is an international program. It started in the States, and now they're really trying to push more Canadian hosts. So you meet people from all over the world, but also your neighbors. So it's, you get a good mix of one-time customers and potential repeat customers or visitors, just because you're the members of the host program are from everywhere. And so, yeah, they just come, they're always interested. Like they sign up for a program like this because they want to know more. They are deeply interested in the farms that they visit, or the businesses, whether it's a winery, whether it's whatever, but they talk greatly about their previous experiences, as well as, like the farm experience, or a lot of time it's their first one. And so you want to kind of do your good job at making it an informative or impactful stay. But other than giving them a bit of a tour around and kind of talking about your business, that's all a host has to do. The patrons or the visitors are required to spend money at your establishment. So whether or not you have a farm store, or if you either that or they make a donation or whatever, and that's not a stipulation on our part. That's part of the Harvest Host program. And we've seen a variety. We have people that do the bare minimum, but generally guests are so excited, and the average spend is usually 50, 60. $100 is not unusual. And it's just one night stay. They don't repeat their stays, but we've had people that like bounce back and forth between us and another local one and then come back and stuff like that because they just so enjoy it, and it's within the rules. So yeah, and we've had up to, I think last year we had 25 visitors, so it's not a ton, but it's just been a really 100% positive. I mean, the most negative experience that we've had was just someone that came late and left early, and we really didn't visit with them, and they taped a $20 bill to our door. So I wouldn't call that a negative, but it was a non-experience. But generally, it's been very positive. There's a lot of chat happening, and I don't know if that's talking
Yeah,
about.
you keep going. I'll read the question.
I was wondering, I was going to I was really worried. Lacombe County is not the easiest municipality to deal with. They are very particular. So I kept our being a harvest host very hush hush for a while. I was like, don't post about it on social media. Don't let the government know. But as far as I know, I've had, channels go through and start asking questions, and it's 100% legitimate, because you're not setting up a campground. All you are is inviting guests to stay with you, which you're allowed to do. We've required no permitting, no nothing. And I think we're a pretty particular, county here, our government here. So all my fears had no basis, because what we have had nobody stop us, and that's really great. And actually encouragement. Our local tourism board now has been promoting this as stuff as well. So we've actually had more support than I thought we would. And there are more farms and businesses signing up. So yeah, I don't know what else to touch on if there's any questions, but I'm more than happy to answer questions at the end or provide more feedback on our experience. But it's been great. And we still do want to do something more permanent, like a Airbnb on the property and stuff like that, some glamping options, but that takes time to set up. And this was a immediate yes for us. And it's been really great.
Thank you, Alita. I'm going to ask you to keep your mic on. I'm going to go through a couple more slides, and then we're going to get to a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind. But so we've been talking to Harvest Host to find out, as Open Farm Days as an organization, how we might be able to work with them. What's really interesting is so 5,000 hosts. However, their database is quite substantial. And they're stronger, of course, in the US than they are in Canada. But there is a pretty strong base here as well. So the opportunity for us to actually do some marketing with them to target some of their base and to let them know what we're doing for Open Farm Days, we think that this is quite like an amazing fit. These are RVers that are looking to travel. They want to go to rural destinations, park overnight, have some sort of experience. So it's really, it's kind of a natural fit for Open Farm Days, and to drive some traffic that we might not otherwise get. So I think there's some great potential. To sign up as a host farm, there's no cost. And when you sign up as a host farm, you also get a membership as part of it. And as Lita mentioned, usually it's the expectation that they spend $40 to $50 US at each stop. So while it's not mandatory, that is part of the expectation of it. So I think that's kind of interesting. And again, as she mentioned, so it's just an overnight stop. There's no hookups, no extra requirements. You set the number of spaces that you have. So if you wanted to dabble in agritourism, and if you wanted to dabble in accommodations, you could test it out with some visitors coming, staying overnight, see how you feel about it. So it's a low cost way of kind of getting into that end of it to see if it makes sense. We know that there's a number of farms that have started looking at having little cabins and different things on their property as part of B&Bs, as part of farm stays. So I think something like this might be an interesting way for you to test out some of those initiatives to see if it's right for you, see if it's right for your family, to see how you feel about having people overnight. So you don't have to develop all the other stuff that you would normally have to have for a farm stay, or as part of a B&B, but it allows you to kind of dabble. And then really it's pretty low maintenance, I would say. We do have someone from Harvest Host that's willing to come online and do a free little session for us to talk about what it's like for experiences, to do a full Q&A if there's interest from people. And we will circulate the presentation and the information as well that comes out with this, to learn a little bit more about Harvest Host and to have their direct information as well. So I think that's kind of sort of a one and done on that. There are a couple of other programs that are similar to Harvest Host. What is intriguing to us about Harvest Host is the size of their database. So again, if we have a lot of farms or a handful of farms that are interested in testing it out, we can then go back and they will put us into their newsletters and do a few things to talk about Open Farm Days. So we can actually look to use this as a vehicle around marketing and awareness, and then of course have people come out to stay. So be very interested to hear any feedback that people might have. Here's a couple of stats that come out about their members. So this is targeting a slightly older crowd. So when we take a look at those demographics that's interested in agritourism, these ones spike on the more senior end of things. Alita, would that kind of align with some of the clientele that that you had come through?
Generally, yes. I would say it's 80% senior, but there are definitely families and stuff like that that come through. So it's not only that crowd, but yeah, I think that's definitely
Yeah.
the mark. Yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel about them saying 55. Is that anyway? Other issues. And pets, yes. So that is one thing that I did want to kind of flag, is many of them are traveling with pets. Now you have bison and you have all sorts of different things going on there. So did you have people arriving with pets as well?
Absolutely, yeah. Most of them will have a dog or something like that, but we've had zero issues. We usually, say pretty quickly, like, the bison will kill your dog, so do your best to keep them on leash. Not that you can get through a fence that easily, but people have been extremely respectful of that. I mean, when we had free range chickens, and like, I prefer your dog not maul my chickens, and we've never had an issue. So it's so far so good, and people are really respectful, and I haven't had dogs barking all night or anything like that. Like, it's been really good.
Wonderful. Okay, great. I'm going to move over to the chat because I see a few things in there. Liability insurance coverage. Yeah. Do you want to talk at all about insurance or anything?
I just made it small. I don't know how to fix it. I'm not going to try. They provide some coverage, like there is some sort of insurance through Open Farm Days. Our farm, just because of the type of agritourism and stuff that we do, I have my own liability insurance in place through cooperators. So I think I'm double booked, but I'm pretty sure that they have some sort of insurance or some sort of liability, like through their, if you look at their code of conduct and that kind of stuff too. I think that there is something that they cover, but yeah, I haven't needed it in 2 years, which thankfully, but I think it is safe if you're gonna have any strangers or public on your property to have your own in place anyways, if that's a direction you're gonna go, just to be safe. But yeah.
So for Open Farm Days, yes, we do have an insurance policy that covers us for that weekend, and each of you are named independently as insured. So there is that component. And then for Harvest Host, they do have a liability insurance coverage program, but they expect anyone that's hosting to have a liability program too. So they have a $5,000 property protection is what they have. But again, happy to field any questions to Harvest Host that anyone might have, kind of specifically about any of those things. All right, let's see what else is in there. Oh, okay. So somebody mentioned we have Capri Insurance, covers farms for agritourism activities. Tam, that's you. Can I ask you to unmute yourself and tell me about any experiences you've had? Because you do a lot with agritourism. So is Capri, are they specific to agritourism? Where are you?
Okay, hi.
Hi. Sorry, putting you on the spot.
Yeah, Capri recently just changed company names, and I think it's Xera now, but I think Capri Insurance will still be a way you can find them online. They have a number of offerings for agritourism farms, and they have a fairly extensive survey when you apply so that they know exactly what you're doing. So pretty much they'll cover all the typical things that you would think of, except for anything to do with horses or anything to do with ATVs, in which case then you need to have sign-offs for sheets for people. But typically, if you had a corn maze or you had a farm tour or you're serving food on the farm or a petting farm, all of those sorts of things are covered. And it's not terribly expensive for the coverage that you get. And we do have a $5 million policy with them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. For Open Farm Days, we use NFP, so National Foster Park. We've used them for the last 10 years. So that's where the additional Open Farm Days insurance comes from. I know that agritourism insurance is a little bit different. So there are many places that do it, and someone flagged Wawanesa as well. So yeah, so lots of different kind of opportunities around there. There was also another question about Harvest Host of where they get their money. Actually, we were joking about this a little earlier, but so the registration, if you're an RVer to get a membership is $100 US. And so they have over 200,000 members. So I think they're doing okay. Wish I thought of that. So yeah, so that's where their money comes from. So anyway, it's kind of an interesting program. Alita, and you also used another, the Canadian one. So it's a mother-daughter team.
Yeah, there's another company called Terrago. So TERGO, Terrago. I don't even remember how to spell it right now.
Yeah.
So they were based originally in Eastern Canada, so Quebec and then into Ontario, and now they're really trying to get more Western Canadian sites. So we have had a number of visitors, people doing like their cross Canada tour and stuff like that, which was kind of fun. They're definitely a lot smaller, but they're very, very similar setup where they have to come in a self-contained unit, and they so it's basically just like French version of Harvest Hosts, because it's quite French, which is kind of fun. And it's so yeah, good experience with them as well, although they're just a lot smaller. So we saw 25 Harvest Hosts and we saw 3 Terrago guests. But again, there's no cost for us to sign up as a host. So we just said, yep. And it's been great.
Yeah, and I think again, there's you don't have to go with just, if this is something you're interested in, you don't have to go with just one platform. You can pick multiple platforms. For us, as I say, we're happy to take a look at kind of working with them from an exposure and awareness standpoint, which I think might drive some interesting traffic. Our goal with Open Farm Days is how are we always getting our information out to new places and new people. So we think that this is an opportunity with an existing database that's interesting. Their formula is pretty similar. I think it was $130 for membership for people to sign up. Database is much smaller. They're getting started, but if that's something that you're interested in testing out and trying out, I'd say go for it and see what that does. And that also, for those of you that are planning stuff on your farm for Farm Days, it really allows you to do kind of a low investment checkout to see if you want to do something. So Alita, after seeing how Harvest Host and that works, would you consider doing something permanent on your farm, or are you happy to stay with that kind of experience?
Oh, we're still looking at doing something permanent. Like there's always every winter when things slow down. I mean, ideas are flowing for us. But it just it's always priorities. I mean, our main business is always going to be priority. So, we have grand ideas and then we turn around and we buy more bees and we do more things like that. So it hasn't happened yet, but the thoughts and the ideas are still there. Again, the collaboration idea too, if we may not be able to set up a full campground or whatever on our property, but we getting to know our community more. There's been we're right on the lake, a couple more Airbnbs in the area getting set up. And so we've just turned to them and say, hey, can we kind of self-promote each other, and you can offer your clients, or we'll give them a 10-15% discount at our farm store if we kind of co-promote and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of something we've been doing, looking at more short-term again. But we definitely want to do more permanent on-farm stays, I think, year-round, right on the lake, ice fishing, that kind of stuff. It just requires a whole lot more work on our part. So we have to be ready for that, because they won't be self-contained then. You need to provide everything. So I just got to decide when I'm ready for all that more work.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, and as you start to talk about the different things, like with your ice huts down there with your greenhouses, and like there's so many interesting businesses there. When I take a look at what the Burn region is doing with their little postcards and their things, it's like, my gosh, like it is just, it takes connecting and collaborating to make those things happen. But, I think that working in partnership and being in it together independently as businesses, but everyone promoting each other, I mean, it kind of just feels good. So something I'd love to see more. Arden, I noticed you had a comment about Hip Camp. Do you mind unmuting and telling us a little bit about that one? I have not looked that one up before.
We do Hip Camp as well.
Okay.
Hi, Tanis. Yeah, we're doing Harvest Host, Tarago, and Hip Camp. Hip Camp's been not really successful for us, but I think we weren't properly set up. And I'm only guessing that it might be a younger crowd, maybe more tenting, that sort of thing. But it's interesting. I'm exactly the same as you, Alita. I was afraid to come out too aggressively advertising that we were, bringing people onto the farm. So last winter, we actually went through Red Deer County, who's pretty progressive, and we made application for a campground. And so we are legal. We can joyously promote, and what we're doing is a 3-day stay, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I mean, they can come anytime they want, but we have activities going on during most weekends in the summer. And I feel now finally we have enough stuff on the farm that though we don't charge for them to come, because that's part of the rules of these groups, that we have enough going on that they can thank us or patronize us through a purchase, which it wasn't always that way. So now at our place, they can have a meal, they can have a hike, they can have nice wine slushies on a hot summer day. So we're happy. We're happy with both of them, and it's fun when Tarago shows up. Often they don't speak English, so I have Pig Latin French, and I just love practicing it, and they're thrilled too. So that's all I've got.
I love it. Thank you for sharing. There's a couple other comments that I'll get to, and then if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, and we can ask, because we're at sort of the top of the hour, so I know we're pretty much out of time. There's a question from Tam. Are there any discussions in collaboration to create a provincial association to connect and support farms offering agritourism? you know, not that I know of. That would be probably a Tim through Ag Society's question. But let me find out, and I'll send you back a note on that. There was a question about this video, and yes, it will be, this video and the presentation will be shared. And yeah, you know, just a great opportunity to get people starting to talk and connect. And what we're also happy to do too is connect everybody here that's on the call. So if you don't mind, an open copy on the materials that come out. If anyone has a concern, if you could just send Nicola a side note. But otherwise, we're happy to be able to connect other people so that if you've got questions about things you've heard or comments that are made, that you can connect directly with other people that might help you with your kind of business as well. So if anyone has any questions, I'll give you a couple of seconds to unmute and say hi.
Can I just request real quickly that I know some people came through the link on our Facebook page. So if you didn't register, can you please send me your email in the chat just so that I can make sure I can send you the presentation? Because if you came through the Zoom link without registering, I can't send it to you because I don't have your info.
Very good. Yep. So make sure to send that to Nicola or put it in the chat now. We have some upcoming training that's coming, and as with anything, we are here to support your development and you know, your work for Open Farm Days. So if anyone wants to talk specifically about your own business, about what you're doing, what you're thinking about for Open Farm Days, I am happy to walk you through sort of opportunities and bat around ideas and share any insights that I have. Nicola is also happy to talk about social media and marketing and how to get your stories out. So feel free to contact us directly, and we can set up a time to chat about your businesses and see how we can help you in your growth towards agritourism. Thank you for joining us today, and hope we will see everybody on the 5th. And again, feel free to contact us at any time. And if there's anything anyone is looking for in terms of specific training, we might have some past videos that we can share with you. And also as we look to continuously build what we're working on, happy to address what's most important to everybody out there. So thank you. And I think that's it. Wonderful. All right. Thanks, everyone.